Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to try our best to see what it is we can expect and what it is we should be doing in the end times. Last episode, we specifically addressed there are instructions that we should be following as we see these the final plagues that complete God's wrath on the earth in the form of 7 bowls that is going to be poured out by 7 angels on the earth. And we're now hitting that very first plague. So we're going to take a look, pick it up where we left off, Revelation 16. We'll just pick it up in 1. Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, "Go and pour out the bowls of the wrath of God on the earth." So the first went and poured out his bowl upon the earth, and a foul and loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. Now I want to start off by saying this is clearly a plague that will only infect those marked with the beast. Now this is a very significant plague, and you know, we've seen plagues in the past, and we kind of talked about one in Exodus in the past, but we're going to talk about 2 of them. We're going to address the one in Exodus, and we're going to address another one, something that happened in Job. And we're going to look at how all this works and who has the power to cause these plagues in the spiritual realm. So we're just going to talk about this plague specifically. Now again, we're going to start with it is only infecting those who have marked with the beast, who have the mark of the beast or worship his image. So it is controlled by God. It is a controlled virus, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, but it is controlled by God on those who get it. And we've seen this before. We're going to go back to Exodus because there's a very significant plague that takes place. It's the 6th plague and boils. So essentially what we're seeing is malignant sores come upon those in Egypt. And we're going to pick that up in Exodus chapter 9 verse 8. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Take for yourselves handfuls of ashes from a furnace and let Moses scatter it towards the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh, and it will become fine dust in all the land of Egypt, and it will cause boils that break out in sores on man and beast throughout all the land of Egypt." So ultimately what takes place is, now again, this is controlled by God, or the angels. The angels are controlled by God, and we talked about that last episode. They do everything he says. It's just yes, sir. They don't question him ever. They just do exactly what he says. But these ashes, as he throws these up, they're spreading. Like if they touch you, you're going to get it. And they're spreading throughout the entire land of Egypt. It's a quick spread, and it happens fast. My guess is everybody was infected within 24 hours based on how this story plays out. Because what we see then in 10 is then they took ashes from the furnace and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses scattered them towards heaven. And they caused boils that break out and sores on man and beast. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils. For the boils were on the magicians and on all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses. So, you know, what we're seeing here is that they threw up the ashes, and immediately everybody in that, at least in that room, the magicians, they all started breaking out in boils immediately. This is not like a pandemic that spreads, that it starts in one country and then we then kind of see, you know, over the next weeks it spread to the neighboring country. This is a disease that's going to affect the whole planet day one. And it's being poured out over the entire earth. So here Moses just threw some ashes up in the air. Now what the angels have is they have a bowl of the wrath of God that came from the furnace ripping in the temple of God. And that is they're going to pour it on the earth. And it's immediately everybody on the planet, with the exception of those not marked by the beast and those who are not worshiping his image. Everybody else, which is going to be probably about 95% of the planet, is going to be covered in festering boils. And it's going to go quick. Now, what does this also look like? Well, we saw this in Job, and we got a little more detail, and there's something very significant you have to get out of this plague that got Job, that you have to get out of this that's significant. So we're going to pick it up in Job 2, verse 3. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? And there is none like him on the earth, a blameless and upright man, one who fears God and shuns evil. and still he holds fast to his integrity, although you incited me against him to destroy him without cause. So Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin. Yes, all that a man has he will give for his life. But stretch out your hand now and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will surely curse you to your face. So the Lord said to Satan, behold, he is in your hand, but spare his life. And Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with the painful boils from the soles of his foot to the crown of his head. And he took for himself a potsherd with which to scrape himself while he sat in the midst of the ashes. Do you still hold to your integrity? Curse God and die. But he said to her, you speak as one of the foolish woman speaks. Shall we indeed accept good from God, and shall we not accept adversity? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. Now, just a side comment, ladies, when your man's covered in boils and suffering, don't tell him to curse God and die. That is not helpful. With that being said, the point of this conversation about Job is not kind of what these boils look like. Covered head to toe in boils. He's got to scrape himself with a potsherd. This is what everybody's going to look like. They're going to be covered in boils. I find it interesting he's also covered in ashes. But what we see here is that Satan caused this plague. This is very significant. What this shows us is not only is God capable of causing plagues that cause malignant sores and boils, but Satan and other angels are also capable of doing this. This is very significant. So, it's a piece of it that, that we have to see, that the enemy has this particular power as well. But as we also see in Revelation, we are protected from this plague. So our enemy has no power against us when it comes to this particular plague. Even though he has ability to do it, he will not be able to do it, because this particular plague is only for those who have the mark of the beast. If for some reason people like you and I started getting boils, it's going to look like it's not from God, and God will not get the credit for it. So, and if you want to just kind of go, well, why does God work through malignant sores and boils? Well, strangely, I think we can see that in Luke 11, at 11:24. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest and finding none. He says, I will return to my house from which I came. When he comes, he finds it swept and put in order. Then he goes and takes with him 7 other spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter and dwell there. The last state of that man is worse than the first. Demons come in because people are not protected. Demons come in because they do not fear God. Demons come in because they are not verbally asking for protection, because they're not aware of this spiritual war. And what they're saying, what Jesus is saying is here, when an unclean spirit leaves a person, that person is able to pull their life together and get healthy again. And then when he comes back, he's like, well, now I'm bringing 7 of my friends and it's going to get a lot worse. And these plagues begin this way, and it's just going to get a lot worse. And Jesus addresses this in Matthew 24, verse 7. When he's talking about the end times, he says, for nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. And there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. This is the beginning. It's the beginning of sorrows. We've had 3.5 years of tribulation, and I think a lot of people are really concerned about those 3.5 years. This is the beginning of sorrows. So we'll just go back and pick up where we left off. So let's go back and read Revelation 16 again too. So the first went out and poured out his bowl upon the earth, and a foul and loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. It's a spiritual war, and it's causing boils. That's what's taking place here. So love to hear your thoughts on all this. Put it in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel with Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so never hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.